Hi everyone, my name is Kendrick and welcome to ENFP Mail. Today I get to interview Deon. Did I say your name correctly?
Yep, Deon.
Deon. Yeah, how's it going, man?
I'm good, man. Glad to be here.
So Deon, can you give us your full officially op type?
My full type is masculine, feminine, N-E-T-I, consume, sleep, play, blast.
Okay,
Blast,
so
blast.
you are an introverted ENTP, double introverted on the front end. So what did you think and how did you feel when you got your results back?
I felt pretty good. Like I was a little surprised. I spent a lot of time on my self-typing. I think I got 2 coins off. Like I got all the animals and the sexual modalities, and I got the TI. But any was like, I thought it was SE. So to
Oh,
see any was, and then the single observer. Since finding my type, I've kind of processed that and been looking at the people stuff, and I'm like, no, they really were information missing type things.
oh, your video just froze all of a sudden. Can you hear me still? Oh. Okay, there we go. It's back now.
Cool.
Um,
Yeah.
I think you had some SI problems there just now.
I'm like, my internet's fine. Okay. But I don't know. What's the last thing you heard me say?
You were saying that you saw your TI for sure, and but I think you said something like you weren't surprised that you were an observer, not a decider, and
Yeah, I thought
yeah,
I was a single decider, and I'm a single observer,
yeah.
and that was a little surprising. So that coin and the any, um, I thought I was SE. I knew I was definitely OE savior. So,
Right.
um, but when I look at the breakdown of my type, like my sensory is masculine and demon. So, and I'm consumed sleep. So I figure I'm pretty aware of it. So, which is probably what was making me think I was a sensory saver.
Yeah, it's very interesting because a lot of people that have extrovert sensing think they have NE, and then you have NE, but you thought you have SE. So there's like a weird, like
And
upside
to
down
be
thinking.
honest, to be honest, I feel like any is just one of those functions that's not really well discussed in the group still. There are a few any savior people out there, but like what it's doing, and I think NI to SE is it's a basic concept I think most people can wrap their heads around. Any is a little more challenging.
Right. It is. It's definitely is hard to explain what NE is. Well, you have NE as a savior, so
It's feminine, and I've been processing that for a while, and I think I know what it's doing. I've been trying to track like my own tidal waves and little things I started to pick up. Like I tend not to give like one answer. That might be any, little things like that.
so did you think you were an ISTP then originally? Is that what you thought you were?
Yeah, I thought I was a consume, sleep, play, blast, ISTP. Um,
And
the
what
only,
sexual modalities did you think you were? Because you said that you also got the sexual modalities off, right?
yeah, I still thought I was masculine, feminine, and the only thing that bothered me about it was I've listened to a lot of interviews on your channel and others from ISTPs, and most of them have that whole like the tribe came after them, kicked out.
Yeah.
Didn't really have that, but
Yeah.
I think it's more like in my head. I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, they're stupid. But I never had anyone like kicking me out or stuff. So,
No, because you're a double decider, then I guess you're balanced with self and tribe.
and I started to notice that more, especially in the last 2 weeks. Like, I might like have, because my TI is double activated.
Right.
I might have issues with the tribe, but I'll like double decide my way through, and I'm just like, oh, the tribe's stupid, and
Yeah.
just move on.
Yeah. I mean, you are self above tribe still, but at the same time, the double decider will always kick in. It's kind of like, did you watch a video with Malcolm Gladwell? His play last ENTP.
Yeah, I did watch him. He's consumed sleep, play last, I think.
Yeah, play last. So he
And
hates people a lot.
yeah, like I feel like I like people. It's just like I think I knew at an early age. I don't know. I think Dave of all people talked about what masculine Ti feels like. It feels like it's just one of those inappropriate functions that's not. It's like you got to put it on a leash.
Yeah.
Um, and I think being a double decider, I learned pretty early on, like, when is it okay? Pull it back.
Yeah, I agree. I think masculine Ti is the most offensive feeling, like, function there is. Like, if someone were to masculine Ti you, it is so offensive. It feels like, you know,
Yeah, and I totally like a while ago I posted in the group like TIs like let FIs like stuff.
yeah,
And that came from a conversation I was having with my mom. She was sharing a book with me and I was pretty much like I was feeling like TI triggered about the accuracy because it's in my field and stuff. And I was like, she's not sharing this with me for me to critique it on accuracy. She's just sharing because she likes it
yeah.
and just leave it alone.
Oh, there you go, man. That's your double decider kicking in. Like, you were aware what was happening, with a tribe.
Yeah, I still had an amends to make, but I track those things. I'll ask like they're not asking me to logic and reason, especially with the FIs. I'm like, just like it, man. Just move on for me.
Yeah. That's a superpower in my opinion. Like, remember that group discussion panel with Neil deGrasse Tyson and all those other TI leads, and he was like literally like the only double decider in the whole group, and he's like trying to explain to them what SF is, and everyone's like, they're like, cannot compute, like, because they're all like freaking like SF last or something, and he's talking about
Yeah,
like, what's that?
yeah, I totally agree, and that's I wish I had spent more time on that coin because that was the only thing that about being an ISTP that was like, this doesn't feel. Uh, Honestly, I just got sick of like watching myself and tracking stuff.
Yeah.
But like when I realized that I was self above tribe, it kind of kicked in. I was like, damn, I think I'm an asshole. Like it's a little bit, like not
Yeah.
that bad.
Yeah.
Um, but I was kind of like, I feel like the closer you get to your actual type, the less like gun ho you are about it. You're like kind of embarrassed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's probably true. And the other thing they said is that when you see someone of the same type as you kind of like you hate that person automatically. Like, like
Yeah. I've been processing that, and I've been like making jokes about masculine TI with other people in the group, and it's almost I only feel that way, like I cringe when
yeah,
I feel like they're like not aware, especially single deciders with masculine TI,
right.
and they're just like wreaking havoc in the group, especially like new people.
Yeah.
They'll kind of swoop in and like, this is inaccurate, this is not tracking.
Yeah.
There's the details are missing, whatever. Um, and I'm like, oh man, that poor guy.
I've always felt like I've been through that cycle before. Like, I was the new guy that came to the group, and I was kind of like invalidating the typing of Dave and Chan at one point. I was like, that's bullshit. Like, they're not typing people correctly. But I was ignorant, like, I had to take the time to go to their classes, watch them over the years. They did improve though. They weren't as good when they first started, but I feel like now they've really tightened the typing process. They're really good now. And I think the biggest realization for me is that they don't watch what people say. Like, what you say, they don't care. They're just watching your emotional spikes, and they're looking for where you are being weird. Like, you know,
Yeah.
like if you're being weird about people or like yourself or the tribe, then you could be an IP or EJ, right? Or like with IJs, with like Tai Lopez, he's being really weird about like the knowledge thing, like the books, knowledge, it's like, why are you being so weird about like reading a book? Like, that's just like something everyone does, right? Like, read a book. I guess he doesn't read a book. That's why, like he has the course notes and he just skims through it, right? And you know, and like I one time I did a Zoom call with an INFJ, and I was showing him my SI,
Mm-hmm.
my gathered known information, and I was being also. He's like, dude, just calm down, just tell it to me. It's good stuff. You don't have to be weird about it. So I feel like you're gonna have the same problem as me because you have SI at the bottom. So when you get to the point in your life where you do have to share that SI, you're gonna be like a weirdo for sure. You're gonna be like, so like
Dude, like I've done a lot of work on SI even before I really knew what it was, and
right.
like I've been kind of circling the periphery with OPS for maybe a year before I finally joined the classes, and I know like anything that's like habitual upkeep, just I despise it, and I usually try to like find some way to automate it or simplify it so that I don't have to check in on it all the time. But but like I do presentations, like I'm a scientist, and I remember my first mentor was like, I used to kind of want to like wing it and improvise, and it's just I didn't. That probably would have been my best reason of why I was blast last. Like I would find myself processing what was on the slides in the middle of the dang talk, which is just the worst. Like
Yeah.
almost like it was new to me. And I think by the time I ended up giving my dissertation, like I had like learned how to SI the slides so that there was logical sequences, like there was a flow to everything. And I can get a little OCD about SI stuff, but you know.
Oh man, that ST sleep is crazy. It is like one of the most nuthead animal there is. It is like, how do you experience your ST sleep? I want to hear from your own perspective. Your ST
Um,
sleep is double masculine also, so that should be interesting.
yeah. And yeah, like it's like, it's so weird hearing other people's idea of sleep because for me, it's like a very active, sometimes intense thing. Like I really can't multitask while sleep processing. Um, it really feels like it takes all of my attention, but it's like so necessary because what I'm really trying to get to the root of is like, how is what I've gathered relate to anything I've already learned usually? Because that's usually why I'm like gathering stuff. Like my consume is double activated, and that's just consume feels like an addiction sometimes. Yeah, but sleep is like it's a very like active, sometimes exhausting thing for me. Yeah.
You said that you're processing things that you already know, but your sleep is ST, so it's a lot of reporter information and a lot of facts. So what's really happening in your head when you're processing it? Like what is like the sequence, I guess you could say, that's happening when you're processing.
Yeah, I'll try to pick an example from like gym stuff. So I was like looking up how to uh, get my front squat form better. And, you know, I gathered all these videos and it was more like trying to figure out the necessary information, the necessary sensory, I guess,
Okay.
and pull apart what are the common trends between them. And then from beginning to end, what should I be feeling? What should I be doing? Um, and then like, I guess outline a like a progression for my own self. Um,
Okay.
I guess that's the best way I can describe it. I'm really trying to sort through the details because like I don't really care about the details. I just want the absolute necessary information.
Okay. So you talked about the SI, how you kind of went through the process with your front squats, and you also talk about tracking it, which is ST, because you're tracking the numbers and the details. So I'm curious where the TI is kicking in. Like what is the TI analyzing, or you know
Mhm.
block banging? Like what are you piecing
That's a
together?
good question.
Right.
Mm.
Yeah, because you even talked about the FE a little bit, like what you're feeling, right? So you talk about the FE, you already talked about the SI. So the TI is kind of, and you talk about a little bit of the TI with the tracking, but the analyzing and the what do you call it? The block banging is kind of missing. So I'm kind of curious where that's kicking in when you're
Right. And so my TI is masculine and double activated. What I think it's doing most of the time is just building on some observation, some concept. It's like, and it gets really deep. Like I don't, I'm very aware I don't have knowledge on everything. Like I'm always amazed at um, some of the TEs that are just out there doing tons of stuff. Like for me, it just tends to dive really deep into um, well, I know, so it serves the NE. And the way I've been looking at it is my TI serves that. So anything I start diving into, I just find all the ways, all the information related to it, and then just build an entire worldview that works for me. So like I sorted through tons of front squat material and um, everything from like how to increase the mobility and my rotator cuff, stuff like that.
gotcha.
And just started to build on that for myself. Like I was like, I don't really need to work on my lat flexibility. That's not an issue for me. That what's for me, I guess.
Okay, yeah, and I'm starting to see some of the TI there. Um because you're practicing the front squats for yourself, and you're trying to understand, I guess, what's the best process to do it, like what is the best way to approach it.
What are the things that are keeping me from advancing in my goals in this particular area?
Right.
So like, I'm aware of all the information, but I only want the stuff that's pertinent for me advancing. Yeah, because like I started to figure out like, okay, this information is not that helpful because I've got great ankle mobility.
Right.
I was like, my lats are fine; they're not keeping me from doing it. But I was like, my rotator cuff, that's the problem. For me holding it in like the Olympic style position. So
Oh, like
yeah, like I was like, I want to do it that way, and
you don't want to hold it like this, right? You want to hold it like this.
yeah,
Yeah.
and primarily because when I find when you hold it like this, one shoulder is like higher than the other.
Yeah.
And it's not balanced. So once you start moving past 225, it's like 225 pounds. It's like every bit counts for being balanced.
Yeah, if you also hold it like this too, like the traditional style, there's also the groove in your shoulder fits better
Yeah.
for the barbell. Because here it's a little bit awkward, right? Like it doesn't really fit as smoothly as like this.
Yeah, and I think it's actually more comfortable once you get the mobility.
Right.
And this way just never, I don't like that. Like once it gets heavy.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. I'm trying to picture how you're processing your ST sleep with the front squats. This is a really good example, by the way. I'm uh
um,
I'm enjoying how you're dissecting the front squats. With the ankle mobility. So it is physical. It is physical in the physical world, and you are analyzing like what is the best way to execute this movement, and what is like the I guess the choke points or the problem areas. So for you, it's your I guess
yeah.
rotator cuffs and maybe some wrist mobility, forearm mobility. Yeah.
Yeah, like it's very, and this is why I thought I was ST because like it's very like what are the facts? What are it's not, but I'm like sorting through the facts. I'm like trying to find what's pertinent, build a logical framework for myself. Um, and I'm still processing what NE is. That was something I was probably going to ask you later, like how you see it, because I know you're an ENFP. Um, but it's like I definitely see the consume, and then the sleep is where I start to sort through all the information um, to just build my own view of how to do the thing I'm working towards.
Yeah. No, your front squats example is perfect. I'm trying to think how to translate that to other parts of life, right? Like
Oh, dude.
like with finance, for example. How do you TISI your finances? Like how?
Yeah, well, I just kind of like build rules, truths for myself. Like I could get really SI about it, but I'm also like to do habitual stuff like pains me. So I kind of just build like guidelines for myself. Like, hey, let's save. Well, let's try to make sure the rent is a third of the income. Let's have a budget, a rough budget for groceries, produce every week, that kind of thing. So I definitely have not SI'd my finances. Um, I typically try to avoid SI, or at least I'll hand it off to like some, like for example, I had a fish tank a few years ago,
Yeah.
one of these saltwater reef tanks. Um, really loved it. It was very complicated, complex, had coral and stuff like that. But the day-to-day upkeep was getting to be like a chore because the water evaporates, the salinity goes up, and that's not good. So I got sick of doing that. So I built like a floating switch. So every time that the water level in the tank would fall, um, it would it would close the electrical circuit to start a pump and put water in the tank. Um, so I always just try to find like ways to work around having to do the day-to-day SI.
So you're trying to put systems together so that you can preserve your energy. That's what I'm getting from you. Like,
Yes.
yeah,
Dude, so I knew I was energy dom when I was like trying to sort out my animals.
yeah.
Um, and it's like it's not even like that I'm tired all the time. It's like I want to go do other things.
Let me ask
Um,
you a question though. When you're doing the other things, are you also wasting time though?
Sometimes, yeah, it's
Yeah,
like
it's a paradox, I think.
I'd imagine to some people on the outside, I probably come off as a little
Yeah,
IJ-ish, but the reason why I agree with Shan and Dave is the the OE, the consume, all that part is, like even in my downtime, I'm just like learning stuff that I can't even like stop it sometimes.
yeah. There's no breaks, right?
Yeah, like that's why sometimes I'll go hiking and just go out in the middle of the forest and like bring nothing with me. I mean,
Right.
not too far, but and just stay in the moment, I guess.
Well, you have sleep and play in your top three animals. So when it comes to energy, you are very balanced, right? Like you have the sleep to hit the brakes and you have play to expend the energy. So, the I guess you could say the valve is always like, it's not leaking. It's like you can
Yeah.
turn on which one you need to use at any given point. But when it comes to information, like the valve for consume is busted. It's like just freaking like, it's like a huge stream and the blast is like it's like stuck, like it can't, you don't have any breaks for information essentially, you know.
Well, I'd say I'm viewing the blast issues as like sometimes like I'll see the tribe trying to hash out something
Yeah,
and I'm just like, man, I know like I have a logical framework to share here, but I think what keeps me from sharing the information is like the effort. Something I noticed amongst other blast people is when we do respond, it's like a very thorough and concise response. Like we're not trying to have tons of back and forth
yeah.
on it. And it's not even this like, hey, take the information and shut up. It's like, hey, I have limited energy or like interest
Yeah.
because I just want to like go do other stuff.
Well, Dave said in one of his videos before that usually your savior state is oversensitive, and especially if you have high sleep, for example, like you actually have more energy than you think. It's just like you think you don't, you feel like you don't, but really there is a lot more in the reserve than you think. So I don't know. That's like an interesting thought. The other thing that I wanted to bring up was earlier you said that when you were doing presentations and you're doing your slides and you're kind of like you know um you were talking about the slides earlier, right? My SI just died earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah. You said you were learning when you're presenting your slides, right? So um, I feel like blasting is a good way to learn. It's weird how that sounds.
I mean, yeah, I don't disagree. It's just so draining.
Right.
Um, I have learned that when I am blasting, that's how I know how well I know the material that I'm
Right.
trying to share.
Exactly.
Um, like I've had to train other people in the lab and stuff like that, and they'll have a question, and I'm like, huh, well, let me go think about that. Um, so yeah, like I teaching and definitely helps.
Yeah, I've had similar experience when I was putting those explainer videos for the different animal types and whatnot.
Yeah,
And I have noticed that I have hit walls at times, like especially with that NF that was a nightmare for me to put together. Like that was like the absolute nightmare. I had like anxiety attack with that shit, you know,
oh
like it was
wow.
like that is like I because I'm info dominant, so I don't want to present you guys the wrong information, right? Like you guys are going to use this information and I don't want you to like fuck your life over because like I gave you a bad advice or a bad information. So I hit so many walls with that when I'm like so many dead ends and it was like a freaking nightmare. Because I'm putting together the slides and I'm getting ready to blast. I'm like, wait a minute, there's something off here, there's something missing. So I'm like, okay, I have to go back again, freaking consume a bunch of stuff from Dave's class, Dave and Chan's class, and you know, put it back together again. And then I'm like trying to blast it now. I'm like, get to a point where like, okay, maybe I'm 50% there, but there's still something missing. I go back again. So yeah, there is definitely something into that. Like you don't know the material as well as you think until you blast it. The blast is like the uh what's the word I'm looking for? It's the proof that you actually know it. Like if you can
Yeah,
it's like what you said, if you can concisely present it, then and you don't have to say gibberish at the end. Because the gibberish means you're putting fillers because you don't really know the material, right? So if you can concisely blast it just from your SI, your known information, then you know you've made it.
yeah, and I find that for the sublower tribe people, when it comes to blast, it's like once you get around to it, it's like I need to fill in the gaps in information because there's certain things I care about in the information, but the tribe probably has other interests. And when it comes to blasting, I'm like, all right, let me fill in the gaps. Or like I remember when I was making these slides during my dissertation, and I had done literally at least 100 other presentations before that, and I just started to get an idea of like the reasoning. And this was I think I work with an FE+Si, and I've been observing her SI, and of course she's organized as hell. But what's amazing to watch with the SI saviors is like there's so much logic that goes into the organization, and I'm not sure how they do that or when they do it. But when I have to do it, it's like I gotta go sleep process. I need a snack. Like it's gonna take me a minute. Where she just builds it, it makes sense, and it's usable for everyone. So
Yeah, you need to consume to get some energy in there too when you're organizing.
that's like literally organizing. And I'm definitely not a slob or anything, but I kind of just want to like get it to work organization wise and get
Right.
out of there. But I've learned like from like grad school, it really pays off to build your organization system well early on so that you don't have tidal waves about where you move stuff.
Right. Man, your SF blast is gonna be so hard for you to do. Like I have SP blast in a savior state, but because SI and TE is still my third and fourth function in the function stack, man, it's still freaking hard for me. Like it's not easy. And so if I have it in a savior state to use that SI, and it's already hard for me, I'm already drained, even though it's a savior. Man, I don't know what kind of hell you have to go through to use it because yours
Well,
is like the last animal and it's just it's the demon of the demon. So
I think and this is where I reflect on my time during grad school, like that really pushed on both of my demons before I even knew what my type was. Like I got boot camp and blast, and uh, the best way I can describe, I really had to learn how to narrow down and really. And I'm okay with that, but it's still like hard today. Like I'll do like presentations we have meetings every Monday, and we have like 2 slides to make an impact and update the lab and stuff. And I'm like, I'll just in the back of my head, it's like, what's the point? And like A to B. That's it.
The good thing about your type though, you have a slight advantage just because you do have SI kind of in a savior state because your sleep is in a savior state. So you have TI and SI in a savior state. It's actually your FE that is pure demon, just because your play and blast are both at the very bottom of your animal stack. Um, so Dave and Shan, they talk about in their class how people who are consume sleep or sleep consume and blast last are actually more coherent sounding than the consume player play consume that has the NI or SI like purely at the demon state. They don't have it in a sleep or they don't have it in blast. So when they talk, they're just absolutely incoherent, right? Like you have no clue what they're saying. They're just talking about nonsense, right? Walking in circles. So yeah, do you feel like your sleep has helped you at least narrow down that SI point so that when you do have to present, even though it's a demon, at least you've had something that you've narrowed down, that you've organized, that you've processed in your head?
Yeah, absolutely. It's like I watched a lot of the consume plays, and the channel changing. It's really easy for me to see, just because I don't have it.
Right.
But I was comparing consume play EPs and stuff like Jordan Peterson versus Robert Greene. It's like you're like one looks more like the standard ENTP, and the other one, the sleep processing just gives him more clarity, like Robert Greene. Um, yeah, so I definitely, if anything, I feel like I have more FE tidal waves sometimes, just because the distance between the masculine TI and the feminine FE is just to get through all the animals. It's a lot.
Well, let's talk about that. So you have feminine extroverted feeling. That means when it comes to dealing with a tribe, you are more movable. But your extrovert feeling also follows the tribe values. So talk about, trying to adhere to tribe values. Like let's say your tribe values uh this certain attributes, like harmony.
Mm.
Let's use harmony, like we don't start fights. That is our value. How do you deal with that? Do you adhere to it, or are you like purely the most rebellious EP and be like, you know what, fuck that shit. I'm not gonna adhere to nothing, like what is
Um, that's a good question. The way I describe it is like I'm generally not trying to like be terribly disruptive.
right.
I think most ENTPs kind of have a knack for being a little disruptive. I'm more like live and let live, and if it is so far from my TI, I'm just like, well, say if it's like a logical reasoning issue,
Yeah.
I'm kind of like, well, I don't really feel a burden to like go and share my TI, so just go be wrong over there where I can't see you.
Yeah.
That's like the cringeworthy like conversation going on in my head.
Right.
But but yeah, I don't really tend to have many like literal tribal issues like, hey, they don't like me. It's more like a man, I really don't want to be a part of this vibe. Um, I tend to gravitate towards people who can do a bit of NF, or just more balanced, honestly. Like I feel like I'm a little bit of like the black sheep in my own family. So
What's funny is that our animals are actually the same. Like we're both NT first, ST second, NF third, and SF last. So we both have the same issue with the SF last. But you did mention a little bit of NF in your explanation now. So I'd like you to talk about your double feminine NF play. Like how do you experience that? Like how do you like to ping up the tribe to see what they're up to? What their purpose is. Are you curious to hear what people are up to, what their goals are, their mission is, their projects?
yeah, yeah, and I feel like I'm proficient with it, presuming I'm like well rested.
Yeah.
Um, but the NF for me, it tends to feel like if I can vibe with them and they can get the NE stuff, because I watched your NF play video and I started to track like what I do with that, and it's very much like making fun of punching on me, punching on you, but it's like I'll take a concept and I'll just kind of run with it to this hypothetical scenario. And that's just so bizarre and crazy. And if we can laugh about that, that's awesome. But am I movable? I'd say I am, but presuming like they gotta kind of be in my box a little bit. Like if I'm have some rapport with that person in the tribe. I wish I could access it more often, but the only problem I have with NF is like if you're in the wrong setting, it just kind of makes you seem like a weirdo.
Right, right, right.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's the problem with the NF lead is that they're NFing in all the scenarios when really this is not the time and place for that. Like this, there's a time and place for it, but not all the places.
Like NF feels like a hobby, and the people that I'm like, all right, if I to say I want to date this person or whatever, if I can use my NF around them and it like doesn't feel weird or whatever, that's cool. Yeah.
You are blast last, which is SF. So talk about having issues with like, the SF, cool vibe or, vibing with a tribe or feeling good, making sure that everything feels good, like what kind of issues have you had with an SF blast, not the blast itself, but the SF aspect of it.
Mm, that's an interesting question. I
Wait,
kind of feel.
sorry to cut you off. Let me add one more piece and then you can run with it. Okay. Part of being SF blast is coming across as caring, not cold, but actually like a caring human being, right? You know, one of my biggest example that I made in my SF blast video was that I have a friend that I think David Chan typed him as an INTP when I went to one of their meetups, and he's like an INTP and he's like SF blast, but I have noticed that he's growing as a person because his house is like the most non-SF house. It's fucking freezing. He never turns on the temperature. It's like freezing as hell. He lives in Seattle, and I'm like when I stay over at his place, I'm like, oh hell, he refused to turn on his heater, so I have to bring my own portable heater with me when I come to stay at his place, and I have to warm my hands in this portable heater, right? And I look like a like a homeless man, putting my hand on the drum, trying to warm myself up. So
Yeah.
I've noticed that he's trying to work in his SF like unconsciously. So he saw me doing that once, and he's like, that looks wrong. Here, drink this tea, and like so pretty much SF is like trying to make people feel better, but it also makes you come across as more human because you're trying to help people feel better with an SF blast. You're like, it's also controlling. Like when my friend gave me the tea, right? It's like a physical object, and he's like, here, drink this tea. It'll make you feel better. So like this physical thing is gonna make me feel better, and he's trying to control me by telling me what to do, right? Drink this. So
Yeah.
um, what what problem have you had by not doing that, by not controlling the tribe, but in a more caring way, like it doesn't have to be the tea. It could be like, hey, sit on this couch. It's a comfortable couch. Go just relax, go there, sit there, relax. I'm obviously not in the tone I'm saying, in a more friendly tone, right? So how are you not doing that, and how's that affecting you, or how could it possibly affect you positively if you were to do that?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I think I got a lot of my SF demon blast tidal waves much earlier in life. Um, so imagine like I'm consumed sleep. I'm kind of living in my head most of the time, and I would say in my like mid 20s, I kind of got to this point of like I don't really have any close friends. I
Oh
don't
shit.
really. It was like, but like no one hated me, but it was like I realized like something was wrong, and that was before I knew what SF Blast was. I realized like I had to start investing in my relationships in a more um like what's the word I'm thinking of? I had to like commit to that. Like for me, it's like a very conscious endeavor to do SF Blast stuff. So like when someone I remember like for example my mom she had called me when I was in college, and this was like 10 years ago. And like I just kind of like ranted about like my day and whatever. And I was about to get off the phone, and she's like, are you like gonna ask me about how I'm doing, or like, uh, I'm sure she called me selfish or something. And she was totally right. And I started to track how I was not doing that in my personal relationships. So I started like trying to work on how to do that. And for me, it can be a little draining because sometimes I realize like people don't want solutions and logic for whatever is going on with them. Sometimes they just like need to be heard.
Right.
And to some extent, that's what the FE is for, like just being there, being compassionate. Yeah.
There's a book. I don't know if you read it. It's The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and it's a classic self-help book, which I think is full of gold nuggets. The big one that they said in that book was that you cannot be efficient with people. But you can be but you can be effective. So if you're trying to be efficient with people, you are gonna fuck up. But you can be effective for sure, but it's not gonna be efficient. So you do have to allocate energy and time to it, and know that it's gonna take some time. And I'm play blast, so I get really impatient. You know, when people are being so slow. You know, like you guys, you consume sleep people. You're taking forever. I'm just not trying to shit on you, but like
I
but
get
like
it.
and because I'm play blast, I tend to attract people who are sleep consume or consume sleep. Like it's just more natural when I talk to that a stack of animals. And the frustration that they have with me is that I'm rushing them all the time. And when my frustration with them is like, you're taking fucking forever, like hurry the fuck up, and like one of the things I used to say a long time ago, which is, it's not good to say this, but there's some truth to it, is that by the time you finish thinking about it, I've already done it. It's like, obviously it's gonna be more sloppy than if you were to do it because you actually thought it through, right? you know uh but at the same time, I have the ping back from the real world of what I did wrong, so I can fix it later on. So it's like it's a gray area. It's not, there's no right and wrong. It's per se. But so yeah, I just want to bring that back to you then. Like,
Yeah, that's I totally agree. I think I've met one other consume sleep, and like I'm pretty aware. And but so like Dave, we had a brief conversation in email where he was just replying, and his general reply was like, yeah, we don't really have much feedback for you. It seems like you're going in a pretty good direction. And yeah, like so I'm I'd say I'm pretty aware of what my general issues are, and I've invested some time in them. And it makes me cringe sometimes when I'll come across another consume sleep, or like when I come across someone that is similar to me, like
yeah.
masculine TI, consume sleep, and they're just unaware. It's like, oh God. And you don't even know how to like start. You
Can
just
you talk
got they
about
gotta run.
can you talk about the
Mhm.
feelings of that when you come across like a fellow consume sleep, like NP person like you, like, or I.
Yeah, really, if I come across another consume sleep or consume play, it's sometimes worse, especially at that masculine TI. It's kind of like, oh God, you can't see yourself and how you're making the tribe uncomfortable,
Yeah.
um, or like I'll get in the group thread, the Facebook group,
Yeah.
and I'm like, oh God, if that's not some masculine TI, just lashing out. I mean, but at the same time, like I definitely needed space. It's just like I did a lot of that before I even like engaged in social media much. And what was on social media I moved. So yeah.
You said earlier that in your early 20s, you noticed that you had no close friends. Like no one hated you, but you had no close friends. And you said that it was a problem. So that tells me that would you say then that you value friendship? Like you value that, you want that in your life? Like that is
Yeah,
something that.
like for me it's good quality. Like I have a handful of good friends that I stayed in touch with for quite a while now. It's been a couple of years. Um, and we honestly, it's just like a place to just be fully authentic. There's a group chat that I'm in with 3 other guys. That thing is like at least 8, 9 years old. And sometimes it's like very much like just kicking the shit, throwing memes around.
Yeah.
And other days it's like, hey, this is really difficult. And if we need to, we'll just get on a call or something. Um, Yeah, and like I would say some of my good friends are more like family. So
Right. Yeah, and if you're obsessed with efficiency, having close friends definitely makes things more efficient. So you can cut through the bullshit of like small talk, right, and just go straight to it.
dude, yeah, and I'll admit sometimes I feel like so my masculine TI, I feel like I've got a leash on it and filtering
Yeah.
it all the time. Around them, I can do my demons,
Right.
or I can like totally be an idiot, and I'll tell
Yeah.
them like how I totally like thought some crazy stuff about a coworker, and they're like, "Oh yeah, you're tripping, dude." Like,
Yeah.
but for them, it's okay if they tell me that I messed up,
Yeah.
or something, and they actually give helpful advice, not
Right.
this like stuff that's gonna make it worse.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, yeah, man, for sure. I think also when you are with your close friends, you can just go straight to your like third and fourth like animal. Also, you don't have to go through the parts essentially. I have a friend. I think he's an ESFJ because he doesn't seem to have his identity, and when he's like with other people, like he's like really like accommodating. But like
Mhm.
I noticed that when he's with me and like close other friends, he is like he's just using his TI. Like when I call him, usually when he talks to people he doesn't know, he'll be like, "Oh hey, how's it going?" He's like all feminine and like really friendly. But when I call him, he's like, "What the fuck do you want?" Like that's the first thing he'll say to me, right? On the phone, it's like, "What the fuck do you want?" And and,
That's
it's
funny.
and it's like when you're
That's
so
rough.
comfortable, it's kind of it's funny. I don't get offended by it. It's just because that's actually that's a real him. He's an
Mhm.
asshole deep down inside, but it's masked by all this like fluffy NF SF stuff, right? You get to the
Yeah.
core, and like really, it's like, what the fuck do you want? And like, and I'm like that too with my friends. Like I say like really offensive things to my friends, right? Like I'm a double decider, and like I don't have like big people problems, so I can say like offensive people problem stuff. Like, I love racist jokes too. Like I hang out with like a multicultural group of friends, and
Yeah.
like I have two friends. We like to play this game called Bomberman. I don't know if you've ever played Bomberman, but like you're trying to blow each other up with a bomb, and you're trying to like dodge bombs, right? And it's like it's a fun game because it can go all the way to 8 players. But but anyway, so I have two friends that are from the Middle East, and they're always like I shit you not. So when I play this game, I play with like a Russian friend and like two Middle East friends, and like a bunch of other Asians. And literally, what my Middle East friends do is they'll come to your base and they will blow themselves up. Like they'll,
Oh
they'll
no.
blow themselves up to kill you. And I'm like, is this part of your genetics? Like, did anyone teach you to do this? Like, like, like,
Mm.
like you're doing this. I know this is a game, but you're doing this in a game. You're blowing yourself up. Like, like, is this part of your genetics? Like, I'll say really offensive things like that to them, right? Like, and it's okay because we're buddies, right? You know.
That is, I gotta ask my guy. I said we should play this.
Yeah, and then one of them, one of my Middle East friends, he repairs airplanes, right? I don't want to be on your airplane. I'll tell him, right? Because
Mhm. Oh,
like,
yeah, I just
yeah. So you're using your NE now, right, to connect the dots, and
yeah.
so
I'll say too, like it's cool you have an EJ friend. Like I wish I knew more single deciders,
yeah,
because something I picked up from them, I think I have one, but I haven't fully typed them, is double deciders. It's like we get into problems with people when we're just like, oh, I'm seeing some issues here with this person,
yeah,
and you try to find excuses or reasons as to why they're doing it, and it's just generally giving you grief or like making you not feel good about the relationship. Single deciders. I was talking to a ESFJ in the group recently, and she's like, "Oh yeah, I'm out of there." Like they just burn it down, and I mean sometimes preemptive, like before you need to. Whereas like the double deciders, like we'll be like, "Oh, we'll deal with it until we just absolutely can't stand it."
yeah.
Yeah, my IP friends like, I ain't got time for this.
I think we have breaks when it comes to that. Like I said, I like really offensive jokes, maybe because it's anti play. So, but I know when I've gone too far, so I will like dial it down. Like I said, I'm like besides my friends who are from the Middle East, blowing themselves up all the time in the game, and like, and I have a Russian friend. We watch this movie like Indiana Jones, and it was Indiana Jones versus like Russians, and I leaned over to him in the movie theater. I'm like, you see all those Russians? They're shit. They're all gonna die at the end of this movie, you know? Because and I'm like, because they're the weakest, right? Like 10 Russian is like equivalent to like one German, right? Like like if you look at World War II stats, like I'm trying to be like so offensive to him, and I'll say to I'm racist to everyone. I'm not just racist to like like I say to other Asians too. Like I go up to my Asian friends and I'm like, I'll be like, do you know how to blindfold an Asian? Like with a dental floss. Like like it's it's NET, right? It's really offensive. And what's
You're
that?
savage. You're savage.
I'm so savage, man. Like when I like insult people, like so that's why I think it's good to like for you too, because you have NEFE play, right? So you'll like Ryan Reynolds is an ESFJ, so he has an NF play, and then, like he plays Deadpool, right? And he's like cracking jokes like left and right, and it's like,
oh, that makes total sense. Okay, yeah, I've always liked him. He's like offensive, but he like hits everybody.
yeah, exactly, yeah.
And I think that's what my NF play is like. It's like it's not like I'm laughing at me, I'm laughing at you. It's just utterly absurd foolishness. Yeah.
So, dude, I think you've made it with NF play if you can hang out with your friends and just no filter, you absolutely shit out the most offensive joke, like kind of like what I'm kind of saying, like the savage level, like like Ryan Reynolds, like savage offensive level joke,
Yeah.
like that's when it's inside you, man. It's there. You're holding yourself back, but like if you can get to the point you can do it sober, then like you made it.
I'll have to. I think in my group of guys, we are pretty like during election season that got pretty interesting. We're one of them's like a meme guy. Like he just finds the craziest stuff.
Yeah.
I sometimes think he's the same type as me, but yeah, I learned to not go all in.
Yeah. You have a lot of breaks. You're still using your sleep, right? So if you can like, okay, so like my girlfriend, for example, she's an INTJ, but she's sleep consumed, play
Mhm.
blast. So in public, she's very safe, right? But then when she's with me, she will tell me like the most offensive jokes. Like it's so offensive. I don't want to get in trouble, so I don't want to say it to you. I mean, I'll say it off camera, but it's so freaking offensive. It's just so offensive, and like I said, she would get in huge trouble if she said it in public. But it's like, but it's so fucking funny, and so that's why I was thinking. I'm like, okay, but she would only do it with me, so it's like literally just one person, right? Because it's like, I guess with a sleep consume play, it's like, or for you consume sleep play, it would probably have to be in a relationship then that you could. That's how far you could go do it. Like you wouldn't.
Yeah, like I think being a double decider, and I feel like my TI just has when it's no filter, I've learned how to like pull that back so much.
Yeah.
So I think when I'm getting to know people, it could be like after a few years,
Yeah.
just kind of feeling out the vibe. And then one day they're like, I did not know you were like that. Or just like,
Yeah.
I don't even know how to describe what masculine DI is like to people. But it's just like it's like give zero fucks kind of vibe.
Yeah. How did people react to you when you finally showed them the real you? Like.
Um, I mean, none have run away yet. Let's say like my guys, one of them is like an INTP most likely, and like and he's masculine TI too. So I'm like, okay, well if he's doing it, then I'm like, fuck it, I'm in.
Dude, man, that masculine PI, it's the most savage like function in my opinion. Like, if you think I'm savage, like that is like the worst of the worst. Like for savageness, like I've had dinners with like people who are like ISTP with like masculine PI, and man, like they would tell me like the most messed up things like that they have done. It's just so messed up. Like especially with dating. Oh my god, like it's just so messed up. Like like
Yeah,
like they'll tell me how they're using girls to like you know and
I
in
feel
fact.
like TI it's just it's I don't know. Did I already use this analogy? It just kind of feels like it's almost like a a weapon or just an inappropriate tool for most things. But once you find something to use it for, like I use it for work,
Yeah.
like it's very handy. But in like human interaction stuff, it's like
Yeah.
put it away, just put it on the shelf, or
Yeah.
bring it out only for your little group.
Right. I mean, you still need an outlet for it because you can't bottle it in, but you need to have the right outlet. The
Yeah.
right outlet. um. So you are masculine and feminine. Before we started the interview, you were talking about like, or maybe at the start of the interview, you were talking about like front squats and stuff. And um, how easy is it for you to like, even though it's in the bottom, your SI is the bottom, how easy for you to control your body, move physical things, do things with your hand with the kinesthetic stuff? Like how
Um,
do you pick things up pretty quickly when it comes to physical things, would you say? At least ones that matter to you.
yeah, I'd say I do. Like I was a track athlete for quite a while. And then like I almost feel like working out is kind of like meditative.
Right.
Like I found something very almost like pleasurable, like doing the workout and like feeling the tension where it's supposed to be. So I'd say I'm pretty in touch with my body. That's why I thought I was SE anyway.
Well, the masculine SI, it's very prominent. Like I work in the fitness industry, right? Like I'm a personal trainer. I teach spin. I teach a lot of senior people, a lot of old people. So and I have SI last like you do. So I just felt like it's kind of weird because we're both lead intuitive. So there would be an assumption that we would be shit when it comes to like anything physical. But no, it seems like it's actually okay. Like we can pick it up. But I do have a question for you in regards to SI. So I don't know if you can relate to what I'm going to say. For me, when it comes to working out, I don't like to try different movements. Like I have a few set of exercises that I like, and I like to stick with those, and I like to like hammer out those ones, like build up on those ones. And I don't care to try to do other stuff. I know how to do them, but I don't want to do them. Like I don't want to do Turkish get up, for example. Like fuck that. I hate Turkish get up, right? You know,
They do so.
yeah, like I don't enjoy it. I think it's boring. I think it's so boring. But I like front squats, for example, and whatnot. So do you find yourself in that kind of same boat where there are certain movements that you enjoy or you like or you prefer, and you don't try to deviate from those because you prefer those ones?
Mm, well, yes and no. I'd say like there are my bread and butter things
Right.
that I like. Like I TI like them because I feel like they give me certain benefits. And but at the same time, like I need variety. Like this is why I started work. I built a program or another one I purchased just so I could stay on a plan that was helping me progress. Because if I get in there, I'll just start improvising. I'll do what feels good, and you know, I can't be objective about how I'm doing. So yeah, like there's like a few things that I'm like I'll do every time like a leg day comes around. But the thing that excites me is like, okay, one mesocycle I'll do pause squats, and in another I'll do like high volume, something like that. So it's a weird balance.
Do you
It's
train
like
for aesthetics or for performance or a little bit of both?
I'd say when I was younger, definitely aesthetics,
Right.
but I've become more conscious of my general health in the past 5 years. And so now I'm just like, look, I want a body that works.
Right.
I mean, I still want to look good, I'm like, but I'm also like, I want to, like, I've been doing more like power building, as you might call it, stuff.
Right.
So like, I'll lift heavy and small reps, and then like another month, I'll do like more bodybuilding style workouts.
I like what you just said. I want a body that works. That seems to be like the very definition of ST, sleep. It just feels
Mm.
like way for some reason. I want a
And
body that works.
and my rationale behind that is like, so I'm in my 30s now, and it's like the 30s are a weird time because you start seeing this divide, and like if you don't start doing stuff right now to maintain your mind, your body, and all this,
Right.
it's just the departure is so huge. Like you
Right.
start aging rapidly, all this stuff. Yeah.
Right. 100% agree with you, man. Like in your 20s, you can get away with a lot of shit, but in your 30s, you need to, especially your health, you definitely need to get that shit together. Like I'm not like exercise wise, I'm pretty good. Like I'm consistent. I go to the gym like at least 4 times a week, and I work out at home too. Like you can see my pull up bar in the back here.
Yeah. So
And hope my landlord doesn't see that, so that I'm breaking the wall. I'm just kidding. But but like my diet is shit, man. Like I would clean it up and it would get like messed up again. Like the meal prep is like the worst for me. Like are you good with meal prepping and like eating the right food? Would you say?
I mean, yeah. Well, I cook every day, pretty much every day for myself, and this is like the OE in me. Like I'll go through like little phases of things that I just get deeply like obsessed with. And for a while I was cooking. I mean, I'm still cooking regularly, but like I like bought all new cooking ware and all this other stuff. Um, but yeah, I think I do okay with nutrition. My only issue with it is like I'm not one of those people that can like eat the same stuff all the time. And I see benefits from that because you kind of know you can track what you're doing easier.
Right.
And then like I have a rotating list and like every like week or so, I'll find something new to start making and I'll decide if I like it or not and add it in the rotation.
Uh, so you have SI last, which is your fear. Like, talk about the "don't control me, bro" syndrome, especially from SI, which is like the police essentially, right? Like, talk about that fear from that
Mm,
SI last. Like,
yeah, I've been processing that more lately and it wasn't as obvious, but I started to see it and it really shows up when like you give me rules, like there are certain rules and like a protocol or something. And like if someone gives me a protocol like for research or something, I'm like, okay, is really all this necessary? Like I'll start picking it apart and figuring out what are the necessary steps because I feel like most of the time people put way too much detail in there. Or like, for example, I bought a car 8 or 9 years ago, and the fear was just like, it showed up that decision to buy the car. It was just like, oh God, this is such a long-term commitment. Like, what if I want to like move to a new country or whatever?
right.
Which was like totally not likely. Like, just like the fear of not being able to have options, because I was like, nah, I gotta have a car payment and all this and all.
Right. I see.
But it
So
was,
so it's like you have a
but I knew
commitment issues.
dude, yeah, like, but at the same time, it was so irrational because it was like, you got a job, dude. Like, you need a car. Like, if
Yeah.
there's anything that you need, it's this.
Right.
So I've seen sometimes when I freak out about SI stuff, I'll like delay a decision and then suffer the consequences of not like doing the SI early or just committing to
So
something.
you bought a new car then, is what you're saying?
This was like 7 or 8 years ago.
Yeah.
Cars paid off.
I see.
That I just noticed what I think are like don't control me, bro.
Yeah.
Freakouts tend to show up in like making long-term commitments.
Yeah.
Um, it's definitely that. Or like having people tell me about, so I'm a pretty self-aware person. Like I've worked on the issues to have someone come in and tell me what they think they know about me,
Yeah.
like identity stuff. Like, oh, you think, especially like I don't get triggered by this in the groups, but I see other people do.
Yeah.
You're like, oh man, well, this stuff you're processing is totally single decider, whatever, and
Yeah.
you need to go work on your identity. I would be like, yo, like, I would probably like get all ugly about that.
Yeah. Don't tell me who I am. I know who I am. Like
Yeah, which is so weird. Like, I just know there's an extra intensity about it that's just not rational.
yeah, yeah. Isn't that interesting? I think David Chan has always said that the TI people are not really logical. Like people with like lead NT are the most illogical people. Like
Yeah, it's weird.
it's
I don't
weird. I
know.
know it's a weird paradox. Um, I like how you said that you wouldn't commit to buying certain things. So the focus is things, not people, right? because you don't want to commit because you might move and stuff. I can relate to that because like I don't want to buy furniture sometimes because I'm like, what if I move? And I do move a lot. I do have a track record of moving every 2 years. So, like I just think of like, oh, I have to move and I have to put them in the moving truck. And that's so tedious. The less I have, the less I have to move, and
Dude, yeah, like my mom was totally like giving me hell about that a couple of years ago. And like I was holding off on buying a washer and dryer.
yeah,
She's like, you need a washer and dryer. Like, what are you doing? Like, I
yeah.
was like, well, the laundromat's right. And she's like, no, get up. And in my head, I was trying to process like, well, what if I leave this apartment or whatever in the next year? It's gonna be such a hassle. I'm like, this is stupid.
I think that's a solution that I found now is not to be a cheap ass and when it comes to moving, I just have a bigger budget for it. I'm just, you know what? I have money. Money will solve that problem. Like someone will move it for me. So I don't have to think about it because, like
Dude,
I've already
yeah.
moved so many times and I freaking hate it every time. So the last time I moved, I just paid someone to move. And actually me and my girlfriend end up not fighting because we usually fight when we move, because like we're both like sensory last. And then, obviously when the sensory becomes the thing, it becomes like the biggest problem. And
Yeah.
yeah, we just shelled out the money last time. We're like, you know what? We're gonna do that from now on. That was a lot less painless.
And so I've totally paid someone to help me move, and it was amazing. Like so little stress, and I know that my stuff is not going to be broken or whatever. Like
Right.
if you ask your friends to move, which a friend of mine was like, dude, if you're in your 30s and you are still asking your friends to move, like get your shit together. That was funny, but yeah, it's just like I don't want to have to worry about people breaking my stuff, like my guitar amps and whatever.
Yeah.
Like I would lose it if some of that stuff got broken.
So with that masculine SI, are you very territorial when it comes to your personal belongings, like objects?
I mean, I I'm gonna say yes. See, I live alone, and I have for like at least maybe a decade now,
Wow.
maybe 8 years, and I don't have a good reference point. 'Cause I haven't like had someone moving my stuff, but I'll see it. Like I don't lend books I like anyway.
Yeah.
Like I don't loan out my guitars. um, I would just rather not.
I noticed with people with masculine SI versus feminine SI, those with feminine SI, they don't seem to care if like their stuff gets ruined. It's like, whatever, it is what it is. Unless it's a sentimental item, because the feminine SI, so it is like there's like a emotion attached to it. But with masculine SI, I do notice that we are extremely territorial when it comes to our things. Like I like one time I have a friend, the one who was typed as an INTP, and I lent him my book, the Please Understand Me Too, by Myers Briggs, the KRC book. And then when he gave it back to me, it was all crumpled. I'm like, what the fuck is this shit? Like, are you fucking kidding me? You know? I'm like, what did you do this for? I'm like, like I started like questioning him, right? And it's like, oh,
Yeah,
I didn't know I wasn't supposed to do that. I was like, oh fuck. And since then, I've never loaned anyone a book again, ever again. Like no one
it's
borrows my book, you know?
it's stuff like that. Yeah, it makes me cringe. You telling the story, like I'm like, yo, we might fight. If you,
Yeah, no, this is serious, man. This is it's gonna end our friendship. You crumpled my book. It's so stupid too, right? If you think about it, I can just buy another one. It's $20, right? It's like, who
and
cares?
I don't know where that comes from. It's like it'll be happening, and I'm like, and then I feel like such a kid, like having to tell them like why I don't want to give them the book or something.
Yeah, yeah,
That's totally happened. I was telling them about a book, and it's like, oh, can I borrow it? I'm like, no.
yeah. And for me now, like I feel like I'd rather buy you the book so you don't touch my book. Like it's
Yeah,
it's so it's so weird, man. It's like, you know what? Let me buy you a book. I don't. Just don't touch mine. Like it's
exactly. And I don't know. I don't even know how to process it, but the best thing I've come across is like I'm going to value it differently, and I just don't trust you to treat it the same way. I don't know.
right.
It's just like, and then if it like gets deformed and stuff, like
Yeah.
God, okay, yeah,
The conversation we're having right now reminds me of that interview with Joe Rogan and Dr. Phil, when like Dr. Phil was talking about like his identity and not knowing it, and then Joe Rogan was like, "Oh, tell me about more about that." You know, he's like sucked in, he's like really fascinated, right? And then now we're both talking about SI, and we're both like retarded when it comes to SI. So we're like, "Oh yeah, what's that?" Like it's like we're like weird. We're so weird right now, you know? Like
Yeah. And it's like I like watching. So this is the most weird SI thing I've been doing. So doing my general YouTube consume, like I'm really into cooking. And there's these channels that are devoted to like how to process and fillet and stuff fish,
right.
like big ones. And like I have no desire to do that, but I'm like, man, they really make it. They just the way they do it, and it's also neatly done. Yeah, I find it very relaxing.
Yeah, I get you, man. Like I love watching those videos where they're like repairing the iPhones and stuff, or like like there's a video of like this Asian girl who's like lives in in China somewhere, and she'll like literally go to like, you know, in the wild, cut out some bamboo and like build something with the bamboo and stuff. And I'm like, wow, this is like really therapeutic to watch. Like, you know, just like
Yeah. And I remember I told a friend, like, man, I'm really finding these videos where they like cut fillets out of like these massive tuna really interesting. And he
yeah,
looked at me like I had two heads. And
yeah.
I was like, oh, well, fine, I guess I won't share that again.
Oh, you're like you were really like engaged,
Yeah,
like yeah.
dude, and it was just like it had me. This is where I was getting weird. I was like, man, I want knives like that. So, and I was like, am I ever going to cut a tuna the size of me? Absolutely not. But it looked cool, damn it.
Yeah, yeah. When I bought my Vitamix, it was one of my happiest days of my life. You know, like
Dude, I have Vitamix.
yeah,
I
yeah,
bought one this time last year. It is like the best kitchen appliance I ever had.
yeah,
We talked about it for like months, and money well spent.
yeah. See, there you go, man. We're both like so like, you know, no Vitamix. Like I bought this M1 MacBook Pro. Oh my god, it's like one of my best purchases ever. It's like I don't know if you saw the new launch, right, with the M1 chip with the MacBooks.
I don't have a MacBook. I have a Mac at work. I
Yeah,
actually need a new computer, so I'll probably go take a look at this when we get
yeah.
offline.
Well, like so, you know, Apple was being cocky in their product launch for the M1 MacBooks, right? The new chip. They're like, it's gonna be 3 times faster than all the PCs out there, you know. And then everyone's like, there's like PC websites that's like bashing them, saying, how can it be so arrogant? They didn't even provide us with any benchmarks or any data to prove their
Mhm.
claim, right? They freaking launched the thing, and it's exactly what they said it was. And everyone was like, what the fuck? And then and like even with gaming, I play games with this laptop I'm using right now. Like I play games on a MacBook, and it's good. It doesn't lag, it's good. And I'm like, and this is the first generation of the M1 MacBook, and I'm like, holy shit, like this is freaking like they created a monster here. Like they destroyed Intel now, and I'm like, man, like I don't know, man. I'm just shocked. I don't even touch my PC anymore. I play games on my Mac. It's because it's better.
Good. I see. That's the kind of stuff I like to hear when I'm like trying to go purchase, and that's totally the type of stuff I'd like. I would look for that review.
Yeah,
when I'm
yeah, there's a website called Max Tech. I think the guy's on EJ. Like he seems like an
Mhm.
ESTJ to me, but like he has the best reviews for the M1 Max. He does all the benchmarks and stuff, which clearly shows you that he's ST savior,
Mhm.
with high play because he seems to be playful too. But I don't think you should buy the M1 Mac because I think the M1X or the M2 is gonna come out soon. So just wait because you know it's gonna get even better, right? So you know,
Yeah.
like just hold up a bit, you know.
It's like it's not like dire. I get a new computer, but I'm getting there.
Yeah.
Just be cheap.
So, dude, I have a last few questions, and we're wrapping up the interview. First one is talk about your audio, like your auditory, like how is your ear for music or sound and whatnot.
I've always so one of the main things I consume all day is music. Um, it helps me like sleep process stuff too. Like there's typically not many hours of the day where I'm not listening to music. I'm also a musician, so that just it's just more of a relaxing thing, and it's been a whole pandemic, so you can't really play out anywhere yet. So
Oh, did you play in a band in public and whatnot or?
So when I was in Nashville, like I wasn't in a band, but Nashville was like that's where I learned how to play guitar. I learned like in my mid 20s, and being the consume sleep I am, it's like I have to know all the things, and I set the benchmark of going to the blues jam session and
Yeah.
playing weekly and stuff like that. And I got to a point where I could do that. Um, oh yeah, it's fun. They have stuff like that here too in Atlanta.
Did would you say you picked up the guitar pretty quickly with the audio kinesthetic? You know, the audio is having the ear for it, and the kinesthetic is like how to, move it. Would you
Yeah,
say?
I do. So what's funny is like I was involved in a circle of other guys who were actually professional musicians, and I think being consumed sleep and audio might have helped just because I was like a sponge. Like I would be around them and pick up stuff they were doing, not necessarily asking them because some professional musicians are kind of like, I don't want to give away my secrets. I would just kind of like, oh, that thing he did, I'll borrow it, and then I'll just like go learn through YouTube and stuff. I would say on the physical side, I remember one of my friends said, it's like, I'm surprised at how quickly you put this all together to like sound good enough to go play in public. Um, and I think just having that, it became like an obsession for a while.
Right.
So that kind of too.
You're not the first consume sleep masculine feminine EP that has talked about music with me in great detail. And every time you guys talk about it, I always feel like, oh my god, I'm missing out by not learning an instrument. Like EP, right? Feel like missing out on something. And like I've always wanted to play the violin, and I almost pulled the trigger during the pandemic when I signed up for violin lessons. But then when I was dealing with them, I felt like they were really controlling, and I'm like, fuck these people, like I don't want to sign up anymore. And so I didn't do that. But I want to ask you questions about your NE now. And you had some questions about for me also about extrovert intuition. So let's talk about that real quick. Um, do you find that you forget concepts and patterns that you've gathered because it's feminine? Like,
Oh yeah. Well, that's a good. I'm glad you brought that up. I feel like what I'm doing is I'm updating like the framework constantly.
right,
So like if we were talking about um let's say guitars or whatever, like some certain skill or technique or whatever, it's almost like I'm constantly updating it. So it's like I don't have one solid framework. It's a moving island, I guess.
right.
And it's kind of frustrating sometimes. Like I've watched the masculine innies and it feels like they leave the planet a little more. Whereas I feel like I kind of touch ground more often.
Right. Um, yeah, okay. That makes a lot of sense. What was your question for me for the masculine NE?
Yeah, I was just wondering like what was your perception of masculine and feminine innie? Like how do you think they're working?
Um, it's hard for me to talk about the masculine NE because I don't have it. I can only talk about what I've seen from other people.
Yeah.
I have feminine NE, so I do forget concepts and connections that I've learned, and sometimes like it pops up in the most inappropriate time, um, where like I would have a flash of insight that is I would think is like pure gold, and then by the time I get home, I forgot it already, and I'm like so
Yeah.
choked, and I feel so choked. I'm like, oh my god, that was good. Like right now, we're having this interview, and you've said a lot of good gold nuggets, and I'm so worried right now it's gonna fly away, and I'm like, oh Jesus Christ, like, because
I've
what's that?
I've totally like gotten up in the middle of the night and just like written stuff down
Yeah,
because of stuff like this. Um, I do a lot of sleep processing before bed, and like I'll just like, oh damn, I gotta find a pen.
yeah, and that's how I feel also. Like I need to write it down, otherwise it's gonna fly away, and it's horrible because it was gold, when I thought about it at least. Um, so with masculine extrovert intuition, you know what I hate about masculine. Okay, I'll tell you what I hate about it because I've been on the receiving end of it, right?
Yeah,
And one of the things I noticed with people with masculine extrovert intuition, especially with family, is that they'll tell me, you always do this. You always do this. They'll say to me, you always do this, right? Because they're very confident with your behavioral patterns, right? With the any, because you can use any for any patterns, but in their case, they're using it for behavioral patterns, right? You always do this. And then so like even with masculine and I too, like my girlfriend, she always says, you always do this, right? You know, like for example, with travel, my girlfriend said, you always jump from one country to the next so quickly. You know, we always do this. I don't like it, you know. So one time I actually did a fact check, right? So I took down the number of days I've actually traveled around the world. You know, because I've been to like 89 countries, and then
Mm-hmm.
how many days did I spend in each of those countries, and how many times I visited those countries with my girlfriend, like certain countries when I traveled with her. And when I narrowed on the number, it came out to be 5% of the time I did that. And I gave her the facts. I'm like, actually, according to my statistics here, when I narrowed it down, there was only a 5% out of the number of days that we have actually done this, that I actually did that. She's like, well, really? You know? I'm like, yep, the number, it's there. So you say I always do that. I've done it 5% of the time. I don't always do it. You know, and before I would get triggered by this when people say you always do that, right? Because I'm like, no, I don't. I know I don't. But then now when I'm tracking the SI, and I can protect myself now. I'm like, actually, according to the stats here, that's false.
Dude,
You know?
that's good. I totally do like call it keep receipts, you know, certain things that I start seeing the tribes like. I don't think I've had those words used to always do this,
Your mom
but
never said that to you?
I don't think no one said that to me. I probably would not have a healthy response, honestly. Because I'm like, hey, well, I need you to provide some facts, sir. You know,
Like, no, I don't know. I just know that you always do it. You know, it's like confident with your patterns, right? And then like,
that would trigger me.
yeah, it's definitely triggering, but you know, I can also see the benefit of it. I've seen people with masculine NE, like they can spit out the most brilliant, you know, connections, and they never forget. So when they're telling you, they're very like confident about their connections and stuff. And it's not always right, but when it's right, it's very. Um, I feel like I'm jealous that I wish I can confidently connect things as well as you have connected it. Because
Right.
you have that. Yeah,
I definitely sometimes I think the only other person of my type I found on YouTube was Cease, and I know you interviewed him.
yeah.
Um,
But he's double feminine though, so he has masculine NE.
yeah, so the only difference between us is the masculine any, and it was so interesting seeing the contrast because like it's like he just kind of takes an idea and it just expands and keeps
Yeah.
going. And for me, it's more of like they're their own unique little sets of ideas, and there may be overlap sometimes, but I feel better tying it back to the details.
The brilliant thing about masculine NE is like Jordan Peterson, right? It's like,
Mm.
he's saying all this stuff and it's pure gold, and
But they mess up. I've gone back and I'm trying to study some Jordan Peterson, and I know he's like super controversial, and I personally like about him. But his clinical psychology stuff is really interesting, and it's like on that stuff, I'm like I'm with you. But when we start moving outside of that, I'm like, he's ignoring all these other sensory details.
man, I find it so funny that when it's someone is that's like a similar type as you kind of shit on them. Like it's
Yeah, you got to.
because
It's
he's
the rule.
because he's an ENTP, right? You're like, like nothing special, like, but like if you see someone that's like an IJ, probably like an INFJ, you're like, oh wow, this is gold, like.
Dude, yeah, like the EJs lately, I've been taking them like I'm still reflecting on that interview Shan had with Reggie.
Yeah,
And it's like she moved into this like alpha state, which was so cool.
yeah,
And I'll say like what fascinates me about the EJs is if you catch them in an alpha state, it's like they're speaking very compassionately, but like from this place of strength. And there's no scarcity mindset. They're like, hey, I have something to give, and they just move on. They're not worried about like, are they going to be accepted or whatever. So I'm kind of moving my way through the types and finding all the alphas and stuff.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. Like the EJ in the alpha state is so beautiful to see. It's just like there's something about it. Like there's like some beauty.
I'm all like, I try to move towards that being self over tribe and all that.
But it's also beautiful when you see an EP going all in discipline, like Jocko Willink, right? It's like discipline equals freedom, right? It's like it is like there's some beauty to it too. It's like wow, Jesus, like it kind of tells you how far you can go, as an EP.
Yeah. Who was that you mentioned?
Jocko Willink, he's a ESFP, and his favorite saying is discipline equals freedom, right? And then it's true. He's not wrong. Like he had an interview with Joe Rogan, and he said, Joe, would you say that you are really creative because you have discipline? Because he said discipline and creativity is directly tied to each other. When you have the discipline to research, he said, when you have the discipline to practice, when you have the discipline to do things that you don't want to do, then when it's showtime, then you have the freedom to be creative. And I'm like, oh my God, that is holy shit. That is like so true. Like for you, like, you have the discipline to meal prep, you have the discipline to work out. Like when the pandemic hit, when I worked out consistently, even though I didn't feel like it, I noticed that I had more energy later on to produce videos. Actually, so like starting in November last year, when the gyms opened up again after the pandemic shut them all down, and I started going to the gym again, I noticed that my the amount of content I can put on YouTube literally doubled overnight, just like that, just by working out. And when I ate healthy, it tripled. So that's where like the discipline's coming in, right? Like when I was disciplined, I did good. When I was not disciplined, I am wasting time. I'm like, I'm on my phone doing dumb shit.
And less stressed, like
yeah,
with like the SI like organization. Like I'm looking at my apartment, I'm like, I need to straighten up, and I'm stressed out.
Yeah, I was thinking about that too. It's the same thing as you. I was thinking about like, what's that woman's name? The ISTJ that they type in the class, Martha Stewart, I think, or yeah, but not just her, but like other people who seem to be IJ. Like what's that other, the Japanese girl? What's her name? Something. She has a book like. Do you know what I'm talking about? Marie. Is that Marie Kondo? Is that her name? Marie Kondo? Is that her name? I don't know.
I think Marie Kondo.
Is that her name? I don't know. Whatever.
But her tagline is like, "Does this spark joy?" Is that ring a bell?
Yeah. That sounds like ISFJ talk to me, but like does your things spark joy SF, right? That seems to me. I don't know if that's right or not, but yeah, I heard from people who's visited David Chan, who's been to their house, tell me that their house is like a military installment, like it's like a compound, like everything is labeled in the house, and like it's not a place of comfort. It's not SF. It's a place. It's like a military base. You're there to get shit done, right? And I was thinking about that, man. I was like, what if I actually spend time and like label all my cabinets? Like, this is where all the spoons are. This is where all the forks are. This is all the plate.
Well, see, and so again, my coworker that has SI, like,
yeah,
it's like she doesn't even need the labels. It's just organized in a way that makes sense. I mean, hey, to each his own, but I've kind of been like trying to steal her methods and logic. And she's actually going to leave for a new job soon. So I'm like, oh God. Like literally she helps so many people in the workspace or helps organize stuff. I'm like, who is going to fill this SI void?
Yeah, no, you have no one to steal from now.
Well, it's like I benefited so much from her SI around me because I'm just like, I don't want to do that. But she like enjoys the data entry, all that kind of stuff.
Right. All right, dude. I have last two questions, and we'll wrap up the interview. First one is, what do you think you can do to work better on that SF blast? And what do you think about? How do you think other people of your type, like ENTP blast last, how would they also work on an SF blast last? So this is your chance to blast. This is your chance to SF blast.
I would say something I learned from an ISTP, Felix, was like to do your demons, try to leverage your saviors. Like,
Yep.
so for me, like I'm in the blast last group. Um, I'm trying to find ways to make blast less painful. So anything that's in my TI, like it's naturally kind of home base. So I kind of practice with that stuff. Um, yeah, something I learned from that group was also someone, I think it was Lee Joy, Lindsay. She made a video about how to blast more effectively, and she was like, tap into what the tribe needs. What are they telling you? And I think that for me is true. Like, figure out what is the vibe, what is the void, like, and tailor my blast towards that.
Gotcha. All right. And then do you have any last questions for me before we wrap up the interview?
Ah, I'm good.
We're good. I think we hammered everything out today. All right, man.
Okay.
Thanks for doing the interview, man. Thanks for coming out. Definitely a lot of gold nuggets I learned from you, which is great. I'll take that in my pocket and hopefully it doesn't fly away.
Write it down.
Yeah, I know I have to after this interview. All right, man. Peace out.
Take it easy.